Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ubuntu Touch Q&A, the UBports Foundation's show discussing the development of Ubuntu Touch and our community's questions. This is episode 103, streamed live on July 3rd, 2021. My name is Dalton, and joining me this week is Alfred.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, it's Alfred.
Hey,
I would
that
have
was a
never
dolphin.
expected that. Whoa! Where?
Behind you.
Thanks for joining me again, Alfred. Hey, if you're listening to this and you say, hey, that Ubuntu Touch stuff sounds pretty good, I want to get in on that, maybe you should check out our devices page over at devices.ubuntu-touch.io. While you're there, you can see if your device is supported or find one that is, maybe for a good price near you. See what works and what doesn't on it, and, well, get the instructions to install it. If your device doesn't have an image made for it, it's going to need a custom one. All of them do, unfortunately. You can go to the porting documentation at docs.ubports.com/porting to learn more. We have a great roundup of news and questions to get to this week. Thank you to chat, who is saying that Ubuntu Touch thing seems pretty cool. It is pretty cool.
It is.
But why don't we talk this week about what's been going on in Ubuntu Touch land? So why don't we start with some updates that have been happening to Ubuntu Touch based on Ubuntu 2004. Of course, this is our huge project that's been running a while and will continue to run for a while, but we've got progress every couple weeks to report back. This time, Indicator Network, we have finished it, merged everything. It's packaged in our Ubuntu 2004 repository, as is Mir 1.8.0. which Alfred found is actually calling itself 1.7.2. That's a bug.
Well, Ratchanan also noticed that one, but it was like, huh? What's going on there?
There's one imposter among us. Rodney is working on creating a way to install click packages without root, which is needed because the old way that we did that has been destroyed. And while we're doing all of this, we're working on finding a way to release software properly as an upstream in a way that works for us, works for Ubuntu Touch, and works for our downstream consumers. Rachnan and Mike are developing scripts that make that task easier. And that's pretty cool. You can find them over in dev scripts in our GitLab. Oh, speaking of GitLab and project management, over on GitLab, in our UBports group, you can find that I've created a series of epics, which are just a project management tool that can have child epics or issues, detailing the work that needs to go in to make 2004 happen. This was a huge undertaking, and while it might not look like much, it's a lot, and it's never going to completely list everything that we need to do. Because this isn't waterfall software development. This is still Agile, but with a bit of a plan. I know that Agile has a plan. Don't at me. So that's our planning over at gitlab.com/ubports. You can click on the epics tab, and you'll see a series of epics that detail different releases that can happen on our way to Ubuntu Touch based on Ubuntu 2004, including the core development release, where we say, the Xperia X, because that's the one Rachnan has an image available for it. So we've proven that it works on system image, moving on to being able to have app developers join in on the party. And from there, having many devices supported so people can opt into it and see what's going on, help us test. With a lot of bug fixing later, we'll be able to move on to general availability, where everyone's device is upgraded to 2004, assuming we hold support. Unfortunately, we still haven't decided which all devices are supportable because we don't know yet. We haven't hit any of the roadblocking issues yet. Epics are pretty cool, yeah. I really like that project management style in GitLab, and it's light enough that I can manage it and not, too heavy, like, okay, I've got to do all this Gantt charts and, like, traditional Microsoft project style management. Rodney says it's called waterfall because it's what comes after your body is bashed against all the rocks and rapids leading up to the waterfall. That sounds right. Is it called agile because you avoid all the rocks, or do you crash into the rocks more gracefully? Big brain. Also happening in Focal this week, there have actually been a couple of updates to the Open Store, which are pretty cool. So there is preliminary support in the Open Store for the Focal distribution. If you really wanted to, I'm pretty sure you could ship an app for Focal. There's no way to build one, but you can do it. But we wanted to have that support available so that once everything is in place, like we can build an Open Store app for Ubuntu 20.04, Clickable is working, we have that working right away, and we don't need to wait for the Open Store this time. So thank you, Brian, for that. Another thing that I think a lot of people are going to be pretty happy about is in the web interface for the Open Store, there is now a version history of applications. So you can go back through all the applications history and download clicks from an older version.
That's cool.
I think this is going to be a pretty popular feature. Again, huge thanks to Brian for making that possible. Basically what happened was I said, hey, can we get Focal support going? I'd like to see it before we have the images ready this time so that it can all be released at once. And a day later, he came back saying, all right, it's ready. And also I added a version history support. Oh yeah, casual, just added version history support. No big deal. So thanks, Brian. That's really cool stuff.
Yeah, chat is already saying, praise Brian.
Yay, praise Brian. Johnny has also been working on clickable support for Ubuntu 20.04 based Ubuntu Touch. Unfortunately, we don't have all the packages available for clickable to work, but the support is there. It's partially ready for reviewing and to take advantage of the Docker images once they're available. So that's also really cool. Now, you might be looking at that Ubuntu 20.04 epic and saying, boy, I don't have any devices that run Ubuntu Touch, or I don't know how I would get that working on my device. How would I install it? What would I do? Well, luckily, this week, Alfred has created a solution for you.
Right. So it basically came out of the necessity that I didn't have the tools on my new laptop anymore to build and test things locally anymore because I'm now not running Linux currently. I do on other devices.
Shock horror.
Oh my gosh. And but I decided to, first of all, I would have liked to have easier to understand tools to build the components that build up and comprise the whole Ubuntu Touch package. And for that, I decided to create the platform development kit, which is basically a solution which is based on a bunch of bash scripts and QEMU, which allows you to actually run and test the packages locally on your machine. They're virtualized by default, which means that if you're running on an Intel-based machine, you're building Intel-based packages and test them until they're ready for building on CI, for example, where they can be built for every supported architecture. But you can also emulate on demand. So when you add the -a argument, and I will show you the command line later, when you add that, you're actually able to download an image from a different architecture and build it for that and test it for that. So it allows you to fully test and build your changes in the VM. And also the source code is cloned into your host directory. So what I do is, it's similar to what other multipaths and things like that do. They mount, or the PDK, for example, mounts the package, the directory with the source code into your VM, so that you can actually write the code, do your changes on your host machine, and then it copies over the source code into the VM and builds it from there. It's an addition to CrossBuilder and other solutions that we already have, but I think it's going to be very useful for those who really would like to help the development of Ubuntu Touch based on 2004 and beyond. And I think it's time for a little demo now. What do you think?
I think that sounds pretty cool. So yeah, this definitely came out of necessity of we don't have the tools available to do this, and it's going to be a while before we really have images available for devices so that people can use things like CrossBuilder, because CrossBuilder usually just builds your package, installs it on your device. You can be getting the demo set up while I'm talking, by the way.
Okay.
A big challenge with developing Ubuntu Touch software isn't always that tools aren't available, but that you might not have a device available to do it.
Okay. Is my screen already shared? Perfect. So with the UBports PDK repository cloned, you actually get the Ubuntu Touch PDK script, which lists a bunch of little commands that you can use. First of all, if you want to use the PDK, you definitely should do the setup beforehand. It will ask you to do it automatically if you have not done it yet, but it's required to set up the environment for you so that you have the SSH server installed, so that you have the host directories for sharing the source code with the guest VM set up. But after that, you can call the pull command. I'm not going to do it right now because I already downloaded an image. And after that, you can do the run. And what it does is it basically, in the background, here you are. There's a little QEMU window, which you can log into in the shell because it's emulating a serial connection. The password is root and for the root user. There's also Phablet user now. But for development, the root user is quite handy. Now I'm going to resize this QEMU window just a little bit.
Much better.
Now, because of a little bug in the whole package, oh, and it's gone. Do a little resize. Due to a little bug with LightVM currently, you have to stop it. LightVM, if I can actually type. And because I have done this already before,
look, a command. Just like that. Let's not read the whole thing.
It's magic. We can actually start the Lomiri shell from within root, and there you have it. There's a little root Lomiri shell running, and it's actually got Wayland support right now. It's also got
fast.
It was fast, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's got a little Lomiri shell with Wayland support and preliminary Mir client support. Not hardware acceleration right now for Mir client, but I hope to change that very soon. But let's just go ahead, and because I've already prepared this a little bit, there are two new commands inside of the shell. The UBports clone command, which, for example, AppArmor clones the repository from the respective place. Now it goes through all the repositories and pulls down the sources. I hope that's going rather quick.
Yeah.
Quickly enough. And when the source is downloaded, it's actually inside of your hosts, accessible from your host, so you can do your changes there. And when you've done your changes and you want to build them, there's a UBports build command, which basically goes into the directory, copies everything into the VM so that it can use the right file permissions, downloads everything that is needed. For example, the packaging sources, the original tarball, the dependencies if they're needed, and then it goes ahead and builds it for you.
What? I haven't seen this before, by the way.
Oh, cool. Now you know. And AppArmor, for example, will take a little while until it's done because it does a little bit of testing in between and makes sure that your changes don't break anything that is expected on the end user system using unit tests and stuff like that. So I'm gonna just go ahead and quit this building process, because there's also, after you've built your changes or your packages, in the /pdk/sources directory, you see your different source packages that you've downloaded. For example, I've built Mesa already. It's got the Debian packages there, the debug symbols. You can just go ahead with apt install and install those packages that way.
Wow.
And also, if I just put the Lomiri shell to sleep and systemctl user start, for example, Lomiri indicator network, we can also, because
So now the network indicator is running, and now
Now it
Lomiri is
should-
running with a gear.
yeah, but
That's the network indicator.
that's the network indicator, and the power indicator could be started too. I didn't do this, but if I started it, it would show up and present you 0% of battery availability. That's due to the fact that it's emulated. I think the Linux version might be working properly compared to the Mac version, but yeah, that's basically a little demo of what you can do with the platform development kit. I really hope this is going to be useful for anybody who wants to test and build packages, to help us migrate Ubuntu Touch from 16.04 to 20.04. And yeah, I mean, if there are little bugs that you can come across, like some have already noticed, we fixed that already. Just open an issue on the GitHub project, UBports-PDK. You can also do pull requests there. And I will just finish this because I think I've shown everything that I wanted to show you. Also, the current state of affairs regarding compatibility is it works on Linux and macOS. And if somebody is willing to help us here, because I don't have a Windows machine to test it on and build it on, maybe Windows support could be added too. So if you're interested in that, just go ahead and talk with us so that we can provide the platform development kit for every major desktop out there so that people can actually work with it. Yeah, that's about it for the PDK.
You know, it's not every day that you see something that's like, that's a quantum leap forward in how we work. I think you've made it.
Awesome. I really like that.
It's it's good stuff. Yes, so I'm excited to see where the PDK goes. There's a lot to like there. I never had seen the UBports build or UBports source commands yet. So I find that really nice. I will be sure to use it if I ever need. Well, it'll probably be in the next week. There's a lot to like there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna squash this in so that we get a little bit of back and forth between us, eh?
Yep.
Last time I talked a bit about what Capsia has been doing in a work study program with us, mentoring type program, and that was a redesign of the Lomiri greeter. Well, I am happy to report that there's been a little bit more going on since then. So we have the, why am I saying we? He did it all. He's got the greeter redesign itself in for review. And now he wanted something else to work on. Someone suggested, well, why don't you make the greeter rotate? This has been something that's been requested a lot on tablets. Well, almost entirely on tablets. And, you know, I see it. Because sometimes you've got a tablet, like, let's say, the Nexus 7. That loaded. I didn't expect that to load. And sometimes you want to hold it upside down. Or you want to hold it in portrait mode. And sometimes you want to hold it in landscape. And either way, you really want the greeter to follow you. Well, with these fixes, it does. And this has been a lot. This has been a lot of work. There were actually 2 different views for the greeter. There was a tall one and a wide one, and they were loaded in different situations. So what Capsia needed to do was combine them into one file that could correctly load and reload itself at runtime, which was no small feat. How can we get that running, says someone in chat. Right now, this is still being worked on. There are still some tests failing. As soon as it's a pull request, you can get it in the normal pull requesty way with UBports QA install. These tests that I'm running here are running through Clickable. If you really want to know, you can ask me how to get that running. But these aren't complete tests. The password for this is password, by the way, in case you were wondering. This isn't real. It's all fake. But it allows you to see what's going on in Lomiri. Yeah.
Nice work.
Mm-hmm. I quite like this. So that is Capsia's work in the past couple weeks. Greeter redesign not only, but also making it spin. So thank you to Capsia for helping out with that. What am I saying? Thank you to me for helping out and him doing all the work. There's a lot of people excited to see this. Alfred, I think you had one other thing you wanted to talk about this week.
Sure, yeah. So as you might have noticed from the demo, I'm now using a Mac. Yeah, long story short, I wanted to have a device with actual native ARM processor because of development needs. And it actually makes it easier for me to build packages for Ubuntu Touch and test them on the device. So there was one thing missing. Since I also maintain a few ports, I also added the ability for Halium 9 to build on macOS. So the Halium side changes are merged. It's now possible to clone the repositories, select your device that you want to build, and have everything working nicely. There's one catch, though, one little caveat, and there is the necessity to change one thing, one little make file in the kernel repository for your device. In the end, it works. It decides to take the right tools to build. It pulls everything that is needed. And basically, 2 days of work, and now you can build Halium 9.0 on the macOS device. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, that's nice. Good.
I really hope that people outside of the Linux community help out with Halium. So that was one of the reasons why I did that. So I hope that.
Well, yeah, I mean, we see a lot of people running Ubuntu in a virtual machine on Windows in the porting groups. So absolutely,
yeah.
A lot of people need that kind of thing.
Right.
Windows has WSL now, which I think is even in Core Edition, but I haven't tested. But still, that can't do USB stuff. So, if you're out there and you're looking at this and you're saying, boy, I really want better Windows support for porting, WSL is great, but I can't push all my files to the device because USB doesn't work. We'd love your help with that. Making, CMD or PowerShell scripts that can do everything that the Bash scripts can would be useful. This is always something there we could use help.
Exactly.
Speaking of ways that you can help, I don't have much this week, but Marcus has been going through a lot of our old issues on gitlab.com/ubports/apps and just seeing if they can still be reproduced. This is actually a huge help because if an issue has been fixed in the intervening time between when it was filed and when you check it, that cleans up our issue trackers. It makes it so that we don't need me, to look at all of them to see if they still apply or not. So that's a lot of help. If you can still reproduce the issue, then adding things like logs can really help us solve a problem. So if you're just getting started and you want something to try out, you want to learn maybe where things log to so that you can fix them in the future, well, going through our old issues might be a great way to do that. There's plenty of logs on Ubuntu Touch device. Plenty. So knowing which one you need can be a bit of a hassle. It's a great place to start learning. Okay. I'd like to say a huge thank you to the people who help make Ubuntu Touch possible, including our platinum level sponsors, Smooze, Vala, and Pine64. They don't ask to be mentioned in this, we just do it anyway. I'd also like to thank our community sponsors, including Travis Mackmer, Amalith, Rask Neres, and Sensfell, Dan Trevino, Daniel Fransak, Robin Hood, Laszlo Tomas, Ian Locke, Max Fielder, A. Thiel, Casey Lambie, George Toma, Renat Mirkalev, Will Atwood, and Scott Marley. If you'd like to join them and have me mispronounce your name as well, I hope I can get the new and updated list as soon as possible. You can head over to patreon.com/UBports. Or if you'd prefer a way that is tax deductible in many states of the EU, you can head over to ubports.com/donate. Over there, we've got LibrePay, we've got direct PayPal transactions, or through the IBAN system, you can donate directly to our bank account, as well as get receipts if needed via an email address that we have. But yeah, we really appreciate everyone who helps us out, who makes it possible for us to create Ubuntu Touch, to have streams like this, to do everything we do, to have servers that actually distribute it and build it. You help us out with all of that. And a lot of other sponsors who help make that happen can be found at ubports.com/sponsors. Again, huge thank you to everyone who's helping us make Ubuntu Touch possible. Let's take some questions this time. So we take these questions from our forum over at forums.ubports.com. And you can go there about a week before these streams. You can get your question in. Maybe it'll be answered a little bit more betterly than if you post 3 hours before and we have no time to research. We really appreciate that. Of course, we may take some questions from live chat as well if we're going through. So let's start. RE88 had a question this week. There's an increasing interest in the use of the Rust programming language, mainly due to its ability to enforce memory safety statically. Is there any interest in integrating this language into Ubuntu Touch? And what do you think would be the components that would most benefit from being written in the Rust language? I feel like we need a fanfare of French horns and trumpets here. I wonder where I've heard that before.
Well, there is definitely a case to be made about the safety enhancements of Rust compared to C++ or even most especially C. It's just we have the current tools that are written in certain languages, and there are a bunch of components written in different languages. Just think about the indicators. But if someone is willing to make Rust a first-class citizen on Ubuntu Touch, then I'm pretty sure that people would really like that, especially for not only for system development, but also for app development. We've seen people use Go. We've seen people use Python for building applications that way. And what components specifically would be beneficial to that is, that's a good question. I mean, the indicators, again, they have a very little set of features that they need to implement, and rewriting them in Rust for someone who is actually knowledgeable in Rust, who actually knows the language very well, could be done probably pretty quickly, or stuff like that. It's not... Yeah.
A lot of the lower level stuff is handled by Ubuntu or by libhybris, though. Rewriting libhybris in Rust seems a little weird, but could be done. We also do have an app template in Clickable available, which sets up your Rust application. So if you want to build a Rust application, you can do that.
Yeah, right. For system components, though, I mean, there are talks about Linux kernel getting Rust support. It's probably not something that we're going to see for our Halium devices, at least soonish. But it's a possibility in the future if you're interested in that and work on kernel stuff. You can also do that if you really want to go low level.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool stuff. I think Rust is pretty cool. I know Marius wrote some components in it way back, and he seemed to enjoy his time with it. So, but a lot of stuff we're writing Qt and C++. So there's that. Accept the shared pointers. Give in to the dark side. No, Rust is pretty cool.
Rust is cool, yeah. Okay, next question from Opayavai. I hope I didn't. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, getting GPS signal inside buildings is almost impossible, at least for me. In the future, there's any sort of plan to implement assisted GPS or something else?
So there is on the location services repository, there is a Xennial Edge Wayland branch. Don't ask. That actually has a location provider named Ichnia in it. Ichnia is the Mozilla location service. Well, a plugin for it. And you could, if you wanted to, bring that to our regular Xennial images. And of course, then we'll also need to bring it up to Focal and see if it works out for you. The Mozilla location service isn't great in all areas, but it's good in some. So worth a try. We're just a little weird about it because Mozilla's had legal trouble with the location service in the past with patents and stuff. So I'm not a lawyer. It just kind of scares me a bit. So we'll see. But if you want to try it out, want to bring it to Xennial, want to contribute, if that's your way that you want to contribute, it's totally possible. I've told you where it is.
Okay, Trividic asks, why is Morph built into the OS and can't be uninstalled through the store? What if there is a CVE? Can we push an update to it without a whole version change of the OS? Do other parts of the OS depend on a web browser? Is in the future, can we see an alternative?
This is a really good question. Yeah. So Morph browser and the Morph web app container are built into Ubuntu Touch. The web app container is the bigger problem here because there's currently not a way that we can have our click packages get resources from a different click package in order to run. So, for example, yes, I can absolutely see a world where we package Morph browser, Qt Web Engine, everything as a click, put that on the system, and it can be updated independently of Ubuntu Touch. The thing is, Ubuntu Touch is supposed to update every 6 to 8 weeks, so things don't stay out for that long before there's a new update coming. So usually Morph browser changes can get in rather quickly, even if it's not at the speed of the open store. Yeah, other parts of the system depend on Qt Web Engine. There are things that use web views that need that deb packaged Qt Web Engine. Unfortunately, not really sure how to fix that yet. Certainly can see alternatives where it's all packaged as a click or something and can all be updated independently. That would be great. It's just not where we are right now. Also, another small problem with the web browser is that there's no one available to update its version to the newest version of Qt Web Engine a lot of the time. So we're running an older version of Qt Web Engine simply because there's no one available to contribute to that. If that sounds like something you'd like to do, we could always use the help. There's some work in progress to make Qt Web Engine 5.15 work on Ubuntu Touch. It's just not done yet. This is always a problem with backporting stuff, because as things continue to move on, we're backporting to even older stuff. It gets a little funky.
Right, yeah. And there's also one alternative would be to package everything into, for the web containers, for example, package the web container into the click package of the web app. But that would imply that there are now not only one single place to update packages and patch CVEs and stuff like that, but multiple ones. And you don't want to get in that.
Don't get updates.
Exactly, and you don't want to get into that situation if you're concerned about security. So there are trade-offs on both sides. So, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it certainly could be better.
Antiforum had a question this week about security. If Anbox becomes famous, is SE Linux or AppArmor used for it? Our fans' implementation of Anbox looks like a big security hole to me.
Well, it's complicated. Of course, there is always AppArmor support required for proper ports of Ubuntu Touch, and Anbox is no exception for that. I mean, it could theoretically run in an unconfined space with very low limitations. But as far as I can tell, for example, the sensor stuff is actually handled by sensor FW, and components talk to each other through, very well-defined interfaces, so that the security story can be improved anyways. It's not like there is this Wild West situation where everything talks to everything else and you can't manage those things anymore. It's a set of very well-defined interfaces that are being used, and those can be mediated through AppArmor. So of course, there is, now that you open up Anbox support for Ubuntu Touch, there is always the risk of installing malware and have that compromise your system. But on the other hand, our AppArmor implementation would still be in place. I would have to ask, to be honest with you, about the current state of affairs, but nothing is holding us back in implementing AppArmor proper confinement for Anbox.
Mm-hmm. This is the one where I was talking about, was posted a few hours before the show, so we didn't get a lot of research in on it. Apologies. Big questions. If you still have questions about this, it's better to post somewhere else on the forum so that someone can read it, give you a better answer throughout the week.
Right. Okay, next up, 1,000 topics. After the pandemic, would you like to do a LAN party somewhere? Second question, what opinion you have about the security issue of systemd in root that has been discovered in June and has existed for 7 years? I know that you were excited to implement it on Ubuntu Touch in one of the next releases, but now do you think it's a good time to look at OpenRC S6R unit? If a government of a country, that's the third question, would ask you to breach the security of Ubuntu Touch, asking the team to create a backdoor in the platform so your intelligence department could have access, how would you respond to them? Would you run away like Edward Snowden or have a legal team? Well,
oh boy. Let's start these from the easiest, eh?
Exactly.
After the pandemic, would we like to have a LAN party or event? Yeah. Events are organized by our community. So if you'd like to organize an Ubuntu Touch event near you, you can do so. And we'll be sure to promote it on this show, on our social media, so that people who want to come talk about Ubuntu Touch can do so. So if you're interested in that, hit us up. Okay. So I actually, no, there was an issue in systemd that allows root access for 7 years. Okay. These issues exist in Linux kernel and are found at least one a year as well. So are we going to switch to BSD? No. Software has bugs. And just because software has bugs does not mean that we should switch to different software, because that software also has bugs. Right. It makes sense for us to use systemd because Ubuntu uses systemd, because Debian uses systemd. And while it's optional on Debian to use other in its systems, systemd is the one that's fully supported. Right. Everything else is optional for packagers. Yeah. So if you wanted to create a distribution which used the Lomiri compositor and system services and everything that used OpenRC, S6 or Runit, or any of the other distributions that exist, init systems that exist, totally possible. We are not going to do it just because of a vulnerability in systemd.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a really good talk about this called The Tragedy of Systemd. Highly recommend a watch of that. It's
I've
buggy.
seen that one.
It's software, you know.
Yeah, there's also something to be said about independent software vendors building software for a specific platform. And systemd is one of the components that allows you to make changes to time settings, to location, to locales. And that one is very useful for independent software developers that want to provide one application for multiple distributions. So it's one of the things that also has a benefit of having a unified, system layer, as they call it, just above the kernel, so that so that developers can actually make use of the full potential of Linux across a multitude of distributions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This last question: if a government asks you to breach the security of Ubuntu Touch, you may need to rethink your threat model here. If you're concerned about a backdoor being planted in Ubuntu Touch, you need to be building Ubuntu Touch yourself. You need to be auditing the software that goes into it, all the way from Ubuntu, all the way from Debian, down to your device.
Down to the compiler, especially, because that one could spit out something with a vulnerability. Who knows?
Yeah, if we're talking about government-level surveillance here, you've already lost.
Yeah.
Because it could be anywhere from Debian to the kernel, or to the compiler used to build the compiler that builds Debian today, to ridiculous kind of stuff. Here's the thing. No one's going to jail for you. If you're concerned that you are doing activity that would cause a government to tell someone else to compromise you, they're not going to go to jail on behalf of you, right? This is a big thing where people say, I use, VPN application so that I can hide my stuff. It's like, no. If you do something illegal, no one's going to jail for you.
Yeah.
Which is an unfortunate thing to say. I mean, if nothing else, even if it's completely baseless, what they're asking you to do is completely lawless, consider, it sounds like you're from the US. Consider your county's district attorney in the US. They have more money and lawyers than you do. So even someone at the county level in your government could make your day very, very difficult for a long time. So this seems like an unlikely scenario to happen. If it does, no one's going to jail for you. We try to protect you as much as we can by not storing data about you on UBports servers, but there's only so much that we can do, and there's a lot more than us in the supply chain of the software that goes to your device. Hope that makes sense. If you still have any questions, let me know.
Okay. And
Louise had a question. In the second half of the year, will the Lomiri desktop start to provide a packaged version for a development build on 2004?
If you use the PDK to develop and help develop it, sure.
Yeah, that's some pretty cool stuff. You can have desktop on your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you can have stuff on your stuff. Isn't that exciting? No, but seriously, the packaging for Lomiri itself, even though it's in very early stages, from the indicators to the shell to whatever application that is required for a desktop environment, those things are not completed yet. But the PDK, for example, would make it easier for others to at least test it out, build the stuff, just play around with the environment, because it's not going to be stable for a long time anyway. So having a confined space in a VM that allows you to play around with the VM and with the shell and stuff like that might make it easier for interested people to actually test the desktop version of Ubuntu 2004 with Lomiri. So, I mean, that's one way to do it. You could also, I mean, if you're very adventurous, you could take the image that is generated from UBports CI and flash that onto your laptop. But I would not recommend that, to be honest with you.
It's kind of fun, though. If you've got a surface lying around or something, it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, going back to the last question. If you have more money than your local district attorney or government, we would love to have some so that we can help make Ubuntu Touch more secure against attacks like the ones that you're worried about. Please find us at ubports.com/donate. This has been a presentation of the UBports broadcasting system, brought to you by the generous donations of viewers like you. Thank you. Kind of thing.
That was
we should probably get out of here. We should probably get out of here.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us for this episode of the UBports Q&A. If you have any more questions, just let us know over at forums.ubports.com. And if you'd like to see if Ubuntu Touch runs on your device, you can head over to devices.ubuntu-touch.io. See if your device is supported, get some installation instructions for it. If your device is not on the list, it's going to need a custom image made for it. And you can head over to docs.ubports.com/porting to learn more. I hear there's some cool stuff happening in that porting documentation. Might be going in by the end of this week, maybe even. You should probably check it out. If you want to talk to us throughout the rest of the week, we have a few options for you, including Facebook, Twitter, PixelFed, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Instagram, and news channels directly on Telegram or Matrix if you want our news in your chat client. You can also chat with us on Matrix or Telegram, #ubports:/matrix.org and @ubports, respectively, or on our forum for longer form content over at forums.ubports.com. Alfred, where can people find you throughout the week?
If you want to get in touch with me, follow me on social media or stuff like that, Twitter is probably the best option. My handle is fredl.me. That's FREDLDOTME. And if you want to check my source code, the other social media account that I have is GitHub or GitLab with the same name. The social media platform for coders.
Can't wait to see what you do there. Thanks, Alfred, for joining me again. Hope we can see you again in a couple weeks.
Definitely.
All right. And we'll see you all in a couple weeks as well. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like this content, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.